Hi, thanks for joining us. Today we're discovering Ashcroft and exploring the history of this once forgotten pioneer cemetery and its connection to the construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway. Before the completion of the Canadian Pacific Railway in 1885, British Columbia was difficult to access from the other parts of Canada. It was easier, cheaper, and faster to get to British Columbia from Hong Kong than from Halifax. Creating a better transportation system and a transcontinental railway was essential to connect the new federation. While European laborers began to build the east section of the railway, Chinese railway workers were brought by ship from California and China to begin building the difficult west coast portion of the railway. The Chinese laborers were paid just $1 a day, and out of this dollar they had to pay for their own food and gear. The European workers were paid up to $2.50 a day and didn't have to pay for their own provisions. As well as being paid less, Chinese workers were given the most dangerous tasks, such as handling explosive nitroglycerin used to break up the solid rock. At the end of a year, the average amount saved by the Chinese workers was just $43, and since many of them had borrowed money to gain passage to Canada, those savings were often used to pay back the companies or agents that had lent them the money. The Chinese railway workers lived in poor conditions, often in camps, sleeping in tents or boxcars. They did their own cooking over open outdoor fires, eating a diet of primarily rice, dried salmon, and tea. Because most of them couldn't afford fresh fruit and vegetables, many of the men suffered from scurvy. Due to the harsh conditions they faced, hundreds of Chinese Canadians working on the railway died from accidents, winter cold, illnesses, and malnutrition. The exact number of Chinese men that died during the building of the railway is unknown, as they were often omitted from the accident reports. Not only did the families of those workers killed not receive any compensation, they weren't even notified of the deaths. Despite the difficult working conditions and weather, the Chinese men earned a reputation for being excellent workers. Although Chinese Canadian workers faced and overcame great obstacles to help build the Canadian Pacific Railway, they were left out of the national celebration surrounding its completion. In the iconic photograph of director Donald Alexander Smith driving the ceremonial last spike, all of the Chinese Canadian workers were cleared from view and not included in the photograph. This cemetery was constructed on lands owned by the CPR and is the final resting place of many of the Chinese workers who helped build Canada's national railway. It was established by the CPR over 100 years ago and has 49 visible grave sites. However, only 7 have their original headstones. The first interment here probably took place in around the late 1800s, and the original headstones that are still here are dated from the 1940s to the 1960s. The cemetery sat unknown and ignored for many decades until around 2005, when the Rotary and Lions Club of Ashcroft and Cache Creek received permission from the CPR to access and revitalize the site. The clubs work together to honor the memories and accomplishments of the Chinese railway workers and their contribution to building the country of Canada. In 2012, a stone marker was placed in the cemetery dedicated to the memory of Chinese workers who helped build the Canadian Pacific Railway in British Columbia. This glass mosaic of a dragon and bench with glass mosaic back was installed in 2016 and funded by the Charles Chow family, who had been coming to Ashcroft for 40 years to visit their grandfather's gravesite. The gravesite has also been revitalized through the installation of mosaic headstones to help replace the original gravestones that were lost or destroyed. In 2017, an altar was unveiled, which contains a plaque that acknowledges the apology made by the BC government for the hardship and suffering that was imposed on the Chinese community. But the efforts of the Rotary Club in Cache Creek and Ashcroft have helped bring increased visibility to the critical role that they played in the building of our nation. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about British Columbia's history. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And until next time, it's time to exit through the gift shop.